Hey there everyone, welcome to Tales in Text and I'm your host Nisha and welcome to another book review. And today's book review is something really special because I'm going to be reviewing a book and an author that I had absolutely no idea existed, and this book turned out to be such an important and eye-opening piece of literature that allowed me to explore new genres of writing and new perspectives, specifically from my own country, India. So, without further ado, let me introduce the book that I'm going to be reviewing today, and it is Divya by Yashpal. So, Divya is a book that is based in the first century BC, and it actually talks a lot about different, really important and sensitive topics such as religion, the rise and fall of various religions and philosophical thought patterns and ways of thinking. It talks of the evolution of culture, and it talks about caste mobility. It talks about untouchability. It talks about gender violence, and it just talks about the unfairness of the world towards people who live outside of the fold. And before I get into the book, let me just give you a brief about Yashpal, and I'm just going to read the author bio in here so that I get everything right. Yashpal, his period was between 1903 and 1976, and he began to write while he was serving a life sentence for his participation as a comrade of Bhagat Singh and Chandrasekhar Azad in the armed struggle for Indian independence. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with these people, Bhagat Singh and Chandrasekhar Azad were very important seminal figures in the fight for Indian independence from the British colonizers, and they believed in armed rebellion, and so Yashpal is their contemporary, and he started writing when he was serving a life sentence for his participation in the Indian freedom struggle. Now, when Yashpal wrote, he formed his first collection of short stories called Pinjre Ki Udan, which was published in 1938. Pinjre Ki Udan, loosely translated, means the flight of the caged birds. Again, of course, I could be wrong with this translation. For those of you who are more familiar with Hindi, please do let me know the correct translation of Pinjre Ki Udan. So after his release from prison, Yashpal dazzled Hindi readers with the political journal Viplava, which he founded and published with the help of Prakashvati, a revolutionary whom he later married in prison. He wrote more than 50 books, including collections of short stories, novels, essays, a play, and memoirs of his revolutionary days. Yashpal died in 1976 while writing the fourth volume of his Reminiscences. Now, this book, Divya, has been translated by Anand and Namita Singh, both of whom are really integral or rather important figures in the translating landscape of Hindi literature. So, right off the bat, you see that Yashpal comes with a he enters the Indian literary scene at a very pivotal moment for India during the fight for independence. And since his outlook was that of a rebel, of a revolutionary, of underground movements, so that is what that perspective and that lifestyle and that belief system of his lends a lot of body to his works. And based on my research of his other works, which also have a revolutionary flavor or revolutionary themes of sorts in them, Divya too has revolutionary themes of its own. So Divya is a book about tracing the story of a woman or a girl named Divya living in the city of Sagal in the first century BC. Now, again, I'm not really sure if the city of Sagal actually existed or it's known by a different name today. Now, the book is about her life and the consequences of the choices that she makes as she's growing up. Divya in particular, belongs to the family of one of the most important political leaders in the kingdom of Sagal, and so she comes from a position of privilege. Additionally, she is also a Brahmin girl, which means that she comes from a Brahmin family. And for those of you who are familiar with the caste system, you will know that Brahmins are considered to be the highest caste according to the caste system or the Varna system. and they represent the head, which are essentially the brain, which connects the rest of the body to divinity. And so this book positions Divya initially at a place of extreme privilege and prestige, but then because of a series of life choices that she makes, wherein she essentially expresses autonomy over her life and over her body in particular, and engages in activities which are even today considered to be scandalous and improper for unmarried women, and thereby experiences a certain set of consequences which ultimately gets her ostracized from her community. And that is where we start off the book. This takes place over the course of the first 3-4 chapters, and that's where the rest of the book takes place. We look at in Divya how Divya's choices affects not only herself, but how it sort of starts a chain reaction of different experiences, life experiences, different life paths for all of the people connected to her, or all of those who are involved with her. Now that's one subsect of the book. And I'm talking about Divya's life as being a minor storyline, representative of a much more major storyline that is taking place. Because in the background, when you look, because Divya's story is still myopic, when you expand your lens, expand your perspective and look outwards, you see that Divya's life story is sort of represented in what is happening in India. Because while Divya's life and her life choices are bearing fruit, the country is seeing a revolution in terms of religious evolution. For those of you who are aware, Hinduism is not a religion that has remained static or the same through the centuries. Over time, it has evolved and changed. The Rig Veda, for example, is an indication of the earliest form of Hinduism, whereas the Vedas that come after it, the rest of the Vedas, the Yajur Veda, Samveda, and Atharva Veda, represent a much more modern, or rather comparatively modern form of Hinduism with a lot of evolution. Similarly, because of these evolutions within Hinduism, which also led to the creation of certain texts such as the Manusmriti and the strengthening of the patriarchy and misogyny in the country, a lot of other and also the strengthening of the caste system in particular, a lot of other religions evolved as a response to Hinduism, and these religions essentially Buddhism and Jainism. In this book in particular, we look at the evolution of Buddhism, because it is at this time in the 1st century BC that you see the rise of Buddhism, and you see this sort of clash between Hindus and Buddhists. And the rise of Buddhism is ultimately, or rather I would say, one of the main fueling ideas that fuel the rise of Buddhism is the abolishment or the abolishing of the caste system, and the caste system is of course a Brahminical product. That is, the Brahmins who are considered or who have proclaimed themselves as the heads or the most important community of people in the country. They designated the order in which people in the community fall. And so Buddhism was a direct attack on the caste system, on Brahminical hegemony. And in the book, we see how there's this clash between Brahmin communities, Brahmin families, and the Kshatriyas who believe in this caste system, in this Varna system, and who want the system to stay prevalent and in power. And then you see Buddhism being accepted and adopted by a larger number of people around the country, and who are actively trying to demolish this caste system. And we see this through the power dynamics that come at play when a person of really low caste, according to the Brahminical system, ends up gaining a lot of power, and which is unanticipated, and then it results in a chain reaction. So we see at a macro level, first off, this religious tension that's playing out. Secondly, we also see, and again, this is something that's really interesting, because this is a perspective that I'd actually never come across before. we see a darker side to Buddhism. We know that Hinduism has a lot of its own baggage, and it has a lot of problematic issues with it, right? But a lot of times we only hear of Buddhism in a very positive lens. But this book really actually makes you think about the negative side of Buddhism as well, in the sense that how does Buddhism treat the minority and marginalized communities, who, or rather the communities who are marginalized by Hinduism, how does Buddhism treat them? In particular, we look at how Buddhism treats its women. And this is where, once again, Divya's story takes center fold again, right? Center stage. We see how Divya's choice over exercising bodily autonomy, over exercising control over her own life, over her own, I would say sexual agency and bodily agency. It not only has repercussions for her from the angle of Hinduism and her Brahmin heritage, but also has its repercussions in terms of how the Buddhists treat her as well. And it's not hunky-dory as you would imagine it to be. And that's where this book really shines, because it really makes you think. Yashpal really makes you think if religions, irrespective of how they have evolved or in response to what they have evolved, are they really the saving grace? Are they really the saviors that they claim to be? Do they really offer equal footing to all the people involved, or is it just to a select set of communities? For example, Hinduism with its caste system definitely favors Brahmins and Kshatriyas. Is it possible that Buddhism also favors certain people? It might not be in terms of caste, but it could be in terms of something else. One of the core themes of this book is about freedom. We see this playing out in multiple levels, just like with the treatment of communities, right? We see this first of all playing out at a micro level in terms of Divya's desire to be free to make choices for her own life, which is unfortunately, first century BC she was not allowed. But then again, things have not really changed even now. To a very large extent, women still don't have complete freedom and agency to make choices about their own lives and about their own bodies. And I'm not just talking about India here, I'm even talking about Western countries. For example, Roe versus Wade, America, that's a very clear example of how women still don't have the freedom to decide what they want to do with their own body. So you see how, first of all, at the micro level, freedom plays a very significant role in Divya's own life in terms of whether she is free to take decisions for herself and if she is free to live the life that she wants. Secondly, we see freedom playing out in terms of freedom from the clutches of the caste system, and then freedom from the clutches of a patriarchal system. And because they can be exclusive, right? They can be connected. Patriarchy and casteism can be connected, intersectionality, but they can also be exclusive, right? So we have different groups of people striving for freedom from the caste system, striving for freedom from the patriarchy, striving for freedom from poverty, striving for freedom from conventional, outdated, outmoded ways of thinking, freedom from the clutches of a society that is skewed and dangerous towards a small sect of people while championing another sect. So freedom plays a very pivotal role here. And that's also why you see the usage of the anklets on the cover page. To me, they represent bondage. And of course, the fact that Divya is supposed to be a dancer here, and that's one of her strengths, her ability to emote through dance, to tell stories through dance. But once again, the anklets also represent a chain, a bondage, her connection, the force that she faces to remain within the shackles of society and of the roles that she's expected to play. Incidentally, again, I hope I'm not giving a lot of spoilers in this review, because I'm finding it very hard to review this book without spoilers. Divya takes up a job after she's ostracized. She takes up a job that is considered extremely scandalous and questionable and morally wrong for women. And you might kind of guess where I'm heading with this. Think first century BC, ancient times, and morally questionable career choices for a woman, right? And incidentally, she dons these anklets as part of her job, and in that instance the anklets transform from a symbol of bondage into a symbol of freedom, into a symbol of bodily autonomy and freedom, because a woman who takes up that particular career, according to this book and according to actually many books that I've read, are considered free women because they don't, or they break free from the shackles and the folds of societal conventions. So they are allowed to make their own free choices because they are not governed by society or by a man in their lives. So lots of themes happening here. And ultimately, this book really actually is a philosophical treatise, you could say, about freedom, about choices, about autonomy, about control over your own life, about free will versus fate, right? So there's a lot happening here in this book, and it's very difficult to sort of encapsulate it in a simple way. This book is just really brilliant if you want to explore these themes. Explore it in terms of how it affects a woman, not just a woman in the first century, a woman even today, and how it impacts a country, a religion, a system as a whole. Here, Divya as a person is an embodiment of India. She's an embodiment of the country. She's an embodiment of a culture that is confused, conflicted, that is imprisoned, and which seeks freedom. And even today, unfortunately, still hasn't been able to get that freedom, possibly because it hasn't been able to define what freedom and autonomy actually look like. So it's a very well written book. The ending, of course, is something that I did not agree with, because ultimately something happens in the end, which for me personally, it kind of veered into a completely opposite direction of what I was anticipating. Because the entire book, up until the last few pages, is heading towards a particular direction. And as you read this book, you kind of understand which direction this is heading in. And so you anticipate a particular type of ending. But then it kind of veers off into a completely opposite direction and it just kind of throws you off. Now, I have two responses to this ending. One is that, of course, I don't like the ending of this book, and I think that's the one part that I genuinely did not really like. And I genuinely wish that Yashpal had stuck to his guns and just continued writing a book that was in alignment with the preceding chapters, right? So I did not like the ending. But when I thought about it a few days after reading the book, I let that review kind of settle in, in my soul, and I kind of stewed into it. And I thought about it, and I felt that the ending, in a way, also kind of is in alignment with the rest of the book, because once again, that ending champions Divya's freedom of making choices. Now, I might not agree with the choice that she made in the ending. I might not agree with how things panned out at a macro level. But ultimately, this book does celebrate the concept of making choices, having the freedom to have agency over your life, agency over your body, agency over the control of your country, agency over your choice of belief systems and practices. Now, I might not necessarily agree with the ending that Yashpal has chosen, but Divya, at least in the book, where the way Yashpal has written it, Divya has made this choice for herself. And I should respect that, because ultimately that's what this book is about. And so in that way, I've sort of made my peace with the ending, although I don't agree with it and I don't really like it. I have made my peace with the fact that at least she had the agency in the end to choose what she wanted after experiencing life in all of its myriad forms. So yeah, it's a very interesting book, and I heartily recommend this. Now, I couldn't find any of Yashpal's books on Audible, so you will need to get either a physical copy or a copy on Kindle. If you like something that's a little philosophical, in particular and specifically about Hinduism and Buddhism, and about feminism in the ancient world, about religious freedom in the ancient world, I think this book does tap into all of those themes. So yeah, you definitely pick it up. I give it a solid 4. I'm kind of veering between 3.8 and 4 right now. It's somewhere between that. But I definitely did really enjoy this book, and I will pick up this author's other books as well. I have in fact ordered them, and I can't wait to read them and also review them. All right, now quickly for the tarot cards. The book for me is represented by the tarot card shaman, also known as the Hierophant. Now, the reason I chose this particular card from this deck, which is the Spirit Song Tarot, is because of the usage of the hawk or the eagle. Now, incidentally, in Hinduism and Buddhism, Garuda, the eagle, is considered one of the most important mythological creatures. Garuda is considered the king of the birds. And while in Hinduism, Garuda represents courage, strength, valor, determination, protection, and so on, in Buddhism, Garuda represents freedom from fear and hopes. This is a really interesting concept for me, especially considering what the role Buddhism plays in Divya's life. And I don't want to give any spoilers, but it is such an interesting thing. And this is again one of those parts where you start questioning if Buddhism is all about, joy and happiness and acceptance, and you start to see a negative side to Buddhism as well. And the representation of the shaman here as an eagle, and how Garuda represents freedom from fear and freedom from hopes, really plays so beautifully into Divya's experience, first-hand experience with Buddhism and with Buddhist monks. So if you read this book, you'll actually understand what I'm talking about. But this card just the epitome of what this book stands for, because ultimately we are looking at Divya, who is a victim of the system which the Hierophant represents religious teachings, the Hierophant represents teachers, the Hierophant represents religious leaders or cultural leaders who create societal rules. And ultimately, Divya is a victim of the societal rules, as are the other characters in this book, and all of their responses. And in fact, religion itself is a victim to societal rules, because the way a religion evolves, the way any religion is born, is a result or is a response to what's happening directly in society. It's a response to the decisions that people take in society. And so, to me, the shaman or the Hierophant represents really well the essence of this book. It's about the framing of a culture, a society, a religion, and how that system, that culture, that religion, that society either helps flourish or completely suppress and victimize a particular individual or a community. And so that is for the book. Now for Divya herself, I have picked the Queen of Shells, because for me the Queen of Shells or the Queen of Cups represents exactly Divya's mindset and her journey. The Queen of Shells is a beautiful soul. She's a lover, a mother, a caregiver. She is soft, but at the same time she is strong. And for me, the seal in particular makes me think of Divya as this person. The seal has a lot of blubber, and it seems like a very cutesy creature, but the blubber protects it from the harsh winters. Its thick skin protects it from the cold and from attacks. And the seal in particular fights off or protects its little pups from the males who are particularly aggressive during certain times of the year, especially during mating season or post-mating season. So the seal, it's a gentle creature towards its pup. It looks cute, it looks harmless, but it has the nerves of steel, right? And it has that blubber and the thick skin to protect it and to fight off marauders who threaten it or its young. So to me, Divya really represents the seal and the Queen of Shells. So she is someone who who is loving, who is kind, who is caring. But she has the strength, she develops that strength, which she herself doesn't believe initially that she has, but she develops that strength and that spine of steel and those nerves of steel to really push back and make her way through a world that is sexist, that is that really punishes people for their birth and for their gender, for their religious choices and their convictions and their lifestyle choices. So for me, Divya represents the Queen of Shells. So yeah, in this way, I think it's time to wrap up this video. If you've stuck around with me so far, thank you so much for watching. And do let me know in the comments, have you read Divya or any of other Yashpal's works, whether in English or in any of the other languages? Do let me know in the comments, alright? And I'll see you next time on Tales in Text. Bye-bye.